a distinguished group of speakers that will present information to you that will hopefully help you with your careers. Now, most of you, I take it now, are sophomore, junior, freshman, all of the above. Any seniors? Couple of seniors? Well, before I really get started, though, I do want to acknowledge and thank Pam Sawyer. Pam, who's standing in the back, is responsible for setting all this up. And through her efforts and hard work, we're able to present for you this morning. So, Pam, thank you very, very much. I have about 5 pages of information I was going to present first, but for the sake of time, I'm going to bypass that and go directly to our speakers, our presenters. The first that will speak to you this morning is Dr. Catherine Keenan. She is the director of the MPA program. And she will talk to you about, I'm sorry?
MCJ.
MCJ. That's right, I got it before this one. The MCJ program. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and then we'll go with the main panel.
So we both have undergraduate students here today. So I have a handout that I think was in the back there. So I'm going to instead talk a little bit about applying to grad school. And my handout has 2 parts to it. One is applying to grad school, and the other part is how to succeed in grad school. But a lot of the information I have on that sheet is obviously relevant to undergraduate students as well. And the first thing I'll say is I do run the Masters in Criminal Justice program. I also run a couple of the certificates, but one that will be starting in the fall is a grant writing certificate. So for those graduate students in the room, that might be something you want to think about in terms of building a marketable toolkit. And when I talk about going to grad school, I'm constantly thinking you should think about this in your undergrad. Who loves methods and stats? There's not one of you? So I run a large contract with the Department of Corrections, and we're looking for someone to do basic statistics, and the starting salary is about $55,000. So how many now think stats and methods might be helpful? There we go. So I would suggest, and this is what I say about building a toolkit, having good statistics and methodology is a great thing to have in your toolkit. And so I'm happy to also, I have office hours every Tuesday to talk about graduate school, so if you want to come by my office, 11 to 1, every Tuesday, I'm always there lonely by myself, please come by. But what I'll say about grad school is, first of all, do your research. And so you want to know, do you want to apply to a sociology program, a psych program, a hardcore crim, or a criminology/criminal justice. So figure out what you want to do, but you've got to start early. So if you want to go to grad school, you really should start thinking about this in May of this year for next year if you were a senior. And the same thing is whatever year you're about to graduate. You want to start practicing your standardized tests. So you can write a GRE, an LSAT, or a GMAT, just depending on your program, allows one of those 3. And you should start practicing, take a class on writing that. The other thing you need to do, and some of you are sophomores maybe, or even freshmen or juniors, is start to take classes with 1 or 2 professors. So you collect a professor that you like, you find enjoyable, and that way when you need to get reference letters, they know who you are. Okay? And so if that means taking 3 classes with Mike, or a couple of classes with Dr. Ryan, etc., they know you and they can feel comfortable writing you a letter. The other thing is, don't ask for a letter to class you got the D in. So that kind of seems obvious, but go for the best grade. Go for the class that may be smaller and the professor had a lot of interaction with you. So like, if you came to me and I'd be like, I don't remember you. I don't think I even know you, so that's not fair. But you want to make sure the professor doesn't have to look like, who are you? Okay? Because then they're going to write a better letter. And then the other thing you need to do is to give them lots of information. Bring your resume, maybe bring some sample papers, meet with the person. Don't just say, Dr. K, can you write me a letter via email? That's probably a poor decision on your part. And this is some stuff I have on the side of how to succeed in graduate school, is don't write a professor an email that says, yo, Dr. K, can I ask you a question? The other thing you want to clearly do is just make sure you have all those deadlines in your calendar. And so you want to get your Outlook or whatever calendar you're using and make sure that if you need me to to write you a letter for October 5 deadline, that I know about that well in advance and that you follow up with me. Because, for example, I am incredibly forgetful, and so are most faculty members. And so just a quick follow-up, stop by their office and say, hey, did you have a chance to finish that letter? Can I do anything else? Don't say, did you finish that letter? So there's some etiquette you want to have when you talk to faculty. And then you want to be sure, as you're getting down to that, narrow it down to a few schools, etc., getting your applications together, getting your letters, is making sure you've applied for financial aid and making sure you meet the deadlines for both federal but also for the school's financial aid. And so some schools, that's early. It's in November or December for the following fall. So you just want to make sure you're following that. And then the other thing I'll say is, don't go to grad school just for the sake of going to grad school. If you aren't ready to be in grad school, it's really expensive. Okay? It's more expensive than your undergrad, and you just don't want to go there and fail and be unsuccessful. So really figure out if you want to be there. And so one of the ways, and I'll do a push for our own program, is Mike and I have a joint program between our undergraduate, which Mike runs, and our graduate program. And you can apply for that in, is it junior year, beginning of junior year, to be a combined graduate student, undergrad student. And so I think the GPA is 3.25, 3.2, 3.2. And so that's a great way to figure out whether you want to and you're ready to be a graduate student. You can also ask to just sit in one of my classes or another faculty member. So sit in a graduate class and see what the difference between an undergrad class and a graduate class. Is there any questions about grad school? Why you do? The other thing we do now have is a combined program with our MPA, and I don't know if we have any. Are you combined? No, it is not. We have, so you could do a Master's of Public Administration at the same time as a Master's of Criminal Justice. And so rather than being 72 hours, it's 54 hours. And so there's a lot of marketable skills there as well. So I know I was really quick. Oh, Pam has a question.
I have a quick question for you. I know you have to go, Katie, but you talked about some of the programs that we have. How do you research schools and programs?
So what I would do to start with is come to my office hours on Tuesdays from 11 to 1, again, because no one ever shows up, and I will talk to you about what you're interested in. So for example, is anyone interested in law enforcement? Is that an interest? So one of the best schools for law enforcement corrections is actually the University of Cincinnati. Okay? And so they have people there that is their core research area. And so particularly if you want to do a master's and then PhD. And so faculty, like myself, are aware of what other schools are doing. And so talking to your professors and getting a feel for what you want to study. If you want to study, for example, violence against women, I'm a pretty good school to come to because that's what I do and a couple of others. But Cincinnati really, I don't think, has anyone who studies violence against women. So you want to choose a school that has things that you want to study. You also want to apply to a number of schools. Don't just apply to one school. So the best school right now is the University of Maryland. That's the best graduate school for criminology in the country. Don't let that be the only school you apply to, right? Because you can think if they're number one, how many applicants do they have? Lots, okay? And so you want to make sure you're applying to a variety of places. You want to live there. Like, who wants to live necessarily in... No, just kidding. Just kidding.
It's a great state.
It is a great state. But maybe Dallas and Austin versus other cities. So you want to think about where you're going to live as well. And so you want to take these things into consideration when applying. You can also do some online searches. So the U.S. News and World Report has the top schools in any discipline, and so you might say, hey, I'm going to apply to the top 10 current programs, and then I'm also going to apply to a few as backups in case I don't make those top 10. And then if you get into one of those top 10 big research schools, they are, or they should offer you a job as a research assistant, particularly if you do a PhD, a combined master's PhD, and you shouldn't go there unless you do. So again, there's some mentoring you want to try and find from your faculty members. And so all of the faculty in our unit who have PhDs could be able to help you with that, because they all have recently, except for me because I'm old, but have recently finished a PhD. And so they'll be able to help you identify. Huh? Yeah, I've turned I've turned 39 almost 10 times. No, I was kidding. Any other questions applying to grad school? The other thing I would do, and I have my favorite student sitting in here, Ethan back there. He was going to teach for you today. Ethan works for me, and Ethan's a great example, sorry buddy, he's a great example of how to get into grad school because he's doing things on campus and getting engaged with faculty and programs. And so you want to think about building your, this is true probably for applying for jobs in law enforcement, is you want to show that you didn't just go to school and work at whatever, Pizza Hut or something like that. You want to show that you were engaged. And so getting involved with faculty research, volunteering on campus, student government, things like that go a really long way in getting jobs, but also getting into grad school. Any other questions? I'm going to see all of you next week in my office hours, right? There's nothing better to do. He did show up. He showed up in entertainment. So I actually have a meeting way on the other side of campus. So on the other side of the handout, and they're back there if you don't have one, is just ideas on being successful. And I would say it's probably true for undergraduate too, but particularly true for being successful in graduate school. So those are some great tips. And I didn't come up with those all by myself. I hijacked some of those. So.
One of the main things today is to get you to start thinking and focusing on where you want to go with your career. Now, for me, when I was sitting in the position you're sitting in, one thing I wanted to do was work in corrections. Now, those of you that are junior, senior status are well aware that you're going to have to complete an internship. Start thinking of where you want to go in terms of an internship. For me, I wanted to work in corrections. So I applied for an internship with Denver District Court Probation Department. I was fortunate to be accepted for that. That started the basic snowball of my career. Because right after I graduated in June, applied and was hired as a state probation officer here in Colorado Springs 2 months later. And a lot of what happened there was what I did with the internship, the recognition by not only the individual that supervised me, but other members within that department. And that's what Dr. Kalkinen also stressed. Get to know your faculty. Be a part of it. Don't just go to class and then go home. Ask questions. Come to the office. Talk to the instructors. From the adult probation office, I applied for a federal position. I was fortunate in 1978 to be appointed as a federal probation officer for the District of Colorado. I served in that capacity for almost 23 years, starting as a line officer and then as a special offender specialist, supervising basically what we would call back then the worst of the worst on probation, parole, supervised release. And then from there I was promoted to supervisor and served as a supervisor of the precincts unit for 2 years, and then promoted to deputy chief. And served as deputy chief for a little over 6 years, and then in December of 2000 retired with the hopes of starting a second career. That second career was teaching. So in May of 2001 I started teaching. Still here, don't have any plans to leave, at least yet, unless Rich tells me it's time to go.
No.
So yeah, start looking at what you want to do career-wise. When you come to me for your internship, have an idea. I want to get into policing. Or I do want to get into corrections. I like probation work. I like parole work. I'm thinking of working in the jail or prison. So think of those areas when you come to me. That sets the stage for where you want to go. Now, the next gentleman that I'm going to introduce, Richard Radwell. I am extremely grateful that we have him here as part of our faculty. One of the reasons is because of his outstanding career. He's like me, didn't know how to retire. Rich worked for the Colorado Springs Police Department for right around 30 years.
30 years, 1 month, and 2 days.
All right, he's got that power. While working with CSPD, he was offered a scholarship to attend DU Law School. So imagine working full-time and going to law school. He did that, very successful. Following his retirement, again, we don't know what to do in our old age, so he started working with the DA's office. Worked there for a number of years and decided he wanted to be his own boss. So he's gone into private practice, he still has his practice, and we're still pleased that he's here with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Rich to talk about potential careers in law.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, my career path, if you're wanting to go to law school, is probably a little different than yours, because I spent the first 20 years working as a cop. And then one day I realized that as I was getting older, the offenders were staying the same age. And so I wasn't running after them as much as I used to. One, it's undignified and you get all sweaty. Because the average offender's age is 18 to 25. And then they age out. They're no longer criminals. But as you get older, it becomes more difficult to keep up physically. So after 20 years on the job, I figured I needed to start thinking about retirement. And then I realized that I was stupid enough to be a lawyer, so I applied for law school and got a scholarship to DU, full scholarship. And that's what I'm going to talk about, is how to maximize your law school career. One of my students here is going to law school next semester on a Fulbright scholarship. So let me kind of give you a breakdown of how to do that. First of all, when you apply to law school, you're going to require to have what they call a composite score. So they rate the university you graduated from, they score that, they being, there is a central clearinghouse for applications for law school. And it's nationwide, so your application when you take your LSAT, which is your law school aptitude test, will go to this clearinghouse and they'll assign a score to you based on your GPA, your school that you graduated from, and your LSAT. Those three scores will create your composite score. Then your law school applications to whatever law school that you apply to will look at that composite score. Mine was high enough that I was automatically offered a scholarship. They only offer 4 a year. So if you get a really high composite score, now you're lucky, we're here at UCCS, we have the same scoring system, or they give us the same score as Boulder, which is ranked really high. So if you graduate from UCCS or Metro in Denver, then you'll get the same score that Boulder gets. Boulder is also one of the top 25 law schools, so keep that in mind as well. Like Katie was saying, she says apply often to a lot of law schools, or to a lot of graduate schools. You can't do that to law schools. The application process is expensive. And if you send out 10 applications, you're spending over $1,000 in application fees. If you have that kind of money, that's fine. Some people are from wealthy families that can afford to do that, but applications to law schools, so pick your top 3. If you're looking for a career as a lawyer, 2 things are essential. Is what law school you go to and where you graduate. It's extremely competitive. In law school, when I went there, they graded on a curve. And so if you had a class of 50 people, only 5 were going to get A's. It didn't matter what their scores were. They would just take the top 5, and those are the A's, and the bottom 5 are the F's. You could have a 78% and still fail, because it's on a curve. When you go to law school, most of you are used to being in the top 10% of your academic class. Well, half of you will be in the bottom 50% when you get there, because everybody's in the top 10%. When I went to law school, they would post your scores on your exams on a hallway. You just put your last 4 digits of your social security number. But that way you could see what everybody else did. Because your position when you graduate is essential on where you get hired. So if you graduate top 10%, all law schools have what they call the Order of St. Ives. They give you an award, and it's also on your law school degree that you graduated in the top 10%. I can guarantee you probably start in a 6-figure job immediately, if not before law school, before you graduate, if you're in that top 10%. If you're in the bottom 50%, then you'll probably be working for the government at some point, like DA or public defender, things like that. I'm just kind of giving you the reality of how to do this. When you go to law school, unlike don't pick your first year of classes. You don't have to worry about any of that. You just show up, tell them your name, and they hand you your books. Your classes are already assigned to you. You don't have any selection because it's all ABA certified, American Bar Association. So they have to teach exactly the same classes. That's why if you're a lawyer in Colorado, you can do one in Arizona, you can go to Alaska, you can go to California. So as long as you go to an ABA certified school, which most of them are, there's a handful, like in California and Florida, that are not ABA certified, and you can only be a lawyer in those states. But most states like Colorado, we have 2 law schools, DU and Boulder, and both of those are ABA certified. So your first year academically, you're going to be taking contract law, property law, constitutional law, civil procedure. It's all laid out. Everybody has the same curriculum. There's no difference. I don't care if you go here or Harvard, you'll have the same curriculum. Now, Harvard is in the top 10 law schools. If you graduate from one of the top 10 law schools, almost more than likely that you'll start off, with a well-funded job. And usually they switch around the top 10. U.S. Newsweek posts as the top 10 law schools, or they rate all law schools. And what drives that rating is how many people apply. So if you're going to apply for a seat at Harvard, you're looking at competing with about 85 students for every chair. So look at 85 applications for every seat. DU, there was only like 12 or 13 applications per chair. When I joined, or when I went to DU, there was 150 students. That's all they admit the first year. When I graduated, it was exactly 75, so half didn't make it to law school. So exactly 75 graduated. So law schools tend to be small. I think Harvard does like 200. So they'll probably get a couple thousand applications for those 200. So it behooves you to really try and improve your scores. So if your GPA, typically, like, you can go on each law school that you want to apply to. You can see what their ratings are. They publish those on their websites. And then you can see what the average score is to get in there. And then when you start practicing, take your LSATs, that's what you want to shoot for, is to be above that average. Because that will pretty much, if you can make that, then you'll probably guarantee that you'll get into that. When I studied for the LSATs, I sat out 6 weeks. They give them twice a year, usually in June and October. The application process, you want to apply the first week of January, if you're planning on going in August of that year. Most law schools will fill their seats before March. So if you apply to law school in June or May or something like that, probably all their seats are gone anyways. So you'll be extended another year before you apply. So you want to get your application in the first week of January, because they'll start filling those seats. So if you take your LSATs in June, you don't like the score, you can still take them again in October. So it gives you a double shot. Now some law schools will take the highest score between the 2 LSATs, the law school aptitude test, and that's an all-day test, by the way. It's about 8 hours to take the law school aptitude test. But there's 5 sections and they time it. But other schools like Harvard, Michigan, Georgetown, Columbia, those are all top 10 law schools, Yale, University of Pennsylvania, they average the 2 scores. So if you take 2 LSATs, they'll add them together and divide by 2, and that'll be your LSAT score. Boulder and DU will just take the highest of the 2. In fact, you can take them for 3 years straight, and they'll take the highest out of those 3 years. So, but every school is different, so you want to check on that. When you turn in your applications, you're going to need a letter of reference. They all require it. So and usually they like to see it from an alumni or somebody that's an attorney that's been to law school, because they'll want to know how will you perform in school. And so, because what they're looking for is not just people that have the academic credentials, but they'll also be looking for somebody that will add something to the student population. Something like, this person helps other students, participates in study groups, will help the instructors, things like that they add to your resume. So, and then once you get there, it's a matter of just keeping up with the workload. The first year is like boot camp. That's where they try and get everybody to quit. we were reading 600 pages a week in law school. My first final in Civ Pro lasted 9 hours. I'm not exaggerating here. We went to the testing center in civil procedure. We had 1 hour to read the exam. When they let us go, we had 2 hours to go to the library and we could look at anything we wanted for 2 hours. Then we came back and we had 6 hours to finish the test. I had 36 handwritten pages. That was my first year. So that's the kind of stuff they do the first year. And then a lot of people just quit, they wouldn't keep up with the work, you know, they dropped out. The second year, it's much more like you're used to. You can decide, I want to get into contract law, I want to specialize in criminal procedure, I want to be a criminal defense attorney, and you start picking your own classes. So after your first year, you take all your ABA certified classes. Then after that, I want to get into elder law, those that are, you know, really insane want to do family law, and so forth. So once you get, so that's kind of the application process of the things, but you need to be really aware of your GPA. If you're going to this university, you're going to come up with a high composite score as far as how they score the university, so that's good. I mean, if you went to, just think of it, if you went to, was it Fort Lewis that's in Durango? Their composite score, they rate the schools on a 1 to 5, 5 being Harvard, Michigan, or Columbia. Boulder rates above 4, it's like 4.3, so it's a pretty good score. If you went to Durango, graduated from Fort Lewis, it's a 2. So, you know, you can see that that would be, you could still probably get into law school if you just killed it with your GPA, had a 4.0 GPA, and had an outstanding LSAT, but you can see how that works. Because somebody that graduated from Yale with a 4.79 GPA, or 3.79 GPA versus someone graduating from Fort Lewis, and I'm not slamming Fort Lewis, it's just, you know, the ability to get a high score changes. So anyways, so that's how you get into law school. Once you're there, you have to tough out the first year. It's brutal. You have no social life. You're reading all the time. My first day in law school, in that Civ Pro class, we had a retired judge, and she had to be 5'1", maybe 100 pounds. She had these bright blue eyes, and she wore reading glasses, so she was always like this. And if you ever see the movie The Paper Chase, it's just like that. You're in an amphitheater, all 150 of you are taking the same class. And she has a seating chart with everybody's picture on it, so she knows who you are and your name. And I'm sitting next to some guy, and he raises his hand. Actually, he's further down the row. He goes, "It's the first day." And he goes, "I think I'm safe to say that I speak for everybody, that I think the reading assignments are excessive," because he saw the syllabus. And you could have heard a pin drop, 150 people in that room. And she just looked at him like she was looking at a dead room. She goes, "Welcome to graduate school." And she called on him every day. His last name was Kennedy. And she would call it, she goes, "I'm sure Mr. Kennedy read the assignment." So, but that's just first year. And there's books on that. There's a book called One Health, which is first year law. Read that. It's kind of funny, but it's about that kind of boot camp style mentality the first year. Because they're trying to weed out the boot thing. And then your second year, it's like going to regular school. Except that there's never any homework. Everything depends on the finals or paper. So you get one or the other. You get a final or you get a paper. And when they give finals in law school, you have 1 day for each final. You don't take multiple finals in 1 day. Because they usually last all day. When you take the bar exam, it lasts several days. When you take the LSATs, it'll be 1 day, almost 8 hours. So, just to prepare yourself. But study for that LSAT. Did you study for the LSAT?
Yes, all summer.
So, and then when you get out and graduate, usually towards the end, you have to intern. I don't know of a law school that doesn't require internships. They find them for you. A lot of times, the internships turn into your job when you leave. Unless you are lucky to clerk for a judge. And almost everybody has to clerk. If you can get that clerk for a judge. I got to clerk for Nancy Rice. She's on the Colorado Supreme Court. So that's a real, then you see how the nuts and bolts of law works, how to file a case, how to file a complaint, what a motion hearing is like, things like that. And then you graduate, but they usually set up a lot of law firms and law schools and military will come in and set up a booth and they have a recruitment day. And people will try and hire you before you get out. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Any questions first of Mr. Allen? No questions? Not at all. All right, our next presenter is Brian Barella. Mr. Barella is also retired from Colorado Springs Police Department. Extensive experience working patrol, undercover work. He is now part of our master's program, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Barella.
I have the pleasure of working with this guy as a cop and as a partner. I'm getting tired.
I'm sorry I talked to him.
No, that's pretty involved. If you're looking to get into law enforcement, I think it's say it doesn't matter what field you're going to get into. If you're going to be in corrections, or if you're going to be a local PD, municipal type of organization, a state organization. Where'd you be going?
No, I was just
Okay, because he's going to be.
recycle bin.
I didn't know he was that smart. So it's kudos for us. It's a good put in our cap for the guys who are on the road pushing a car. I think the best preparation or news I could give you or information I could give you if you're looking for law enforcement as a job, whether it be in the prisons, maybe even probation, in a state trooper situation, to be as diverse as you can, to get a lot of experience with diversity, if you haven't already. And that could be anywhere from volunteering out in the community, which is was going to help prepare you for what you're going to be experiencing if you get into the field. Working with different folks, understanding where they're coming from, with different socioeconomic backgrounds. I think it's the one thing I don't think a lot of cops really think about until maybe they're in the academy and they realize what they're going to be dealing with. So I think that's a very important tool for you guys to be thinking about is if you're going to go that route, go into public service, you're going to deal with the community, not just if you're a very personal person, but to really know or have an idea of different socioeconomic backgrounds and what that might mean or what that might look like, especially if you become a person in a position of trust with a bunch of authority. We got enough black eyes, law enforcement, you always have one bad apple. Just need to be prepared in that sense. If you're looking to get on with the police department here locally, I was on the recruiting team. I'm not officially with them to be speaking about this, but my buddy Isaac's not here. But there are some basics that you need to be thinking about. You need at least be 21 years of age, no convicted felonies. There are some misdemeanors that could preclude you from a law enforcement background, depending on where you're looking. Their website, I know ours here in Springs, on our recruiting website, they have a list of those misdemeanors that will preclude you from being law enforcement. Time is your best friend when it comes to if it's something simple, simple misdemeanor or traffic offenses. The more time you can get put between the offense and when you're applying and what you've done, all that stuff kind of goes to your favor. Physical condition is one thing to be thinking about, whether that's part of your life now. As you can probably imagine, it could be a life or death situation. You're on the street. You want to take care of yourself as well as your partners. And your health really affects everybody in the ballgame when you're in that situation. Our department requires only 60 credit hours. if you want to start looking for promotions, you know, is when you start looking for your 4-year degrees and getting up in the ranks, then you want your master's, things of that nature. I went in with my bachelor's. I was able to get more experience after college. I didn't know I was going to be a cop. I was supposed to work in a children's hospital. So, you have to keep an open mind. When I got out of college, I went into the military. I got right into law enforcement. It was interested me at that point, and that's when I really got my feet wet. My light bulb went on what I wanted to do. You know, it's really about helping folks who can't help themselves, as corny as that sounds. But that's what being in law enforcement, whether you're on the, you know, you're in the lawyer side or probation side, it's really about getting people to a point, you know, where they need to be to help them out, help them better themselves. That's pretty much it for me. You know, just really if there's specific questions about that, it's just really depends on what you want when you're getting that. If you're looking to that profession, there are some things you want to start thinking about now. You don't know, so just don't get in trouble. You never know what that's going to affect. When you start really zeroing in on the profession you're going to sell it on.
Something I want to throw out here real quick, marijuana is legal in the state.
Yeah.
Not hiring you to smoke within 3 years of your application. So even though it's not illegal, one of the screening things is that you have to stay off the marijuana for 3 years. Just to let you guys know. Throw that out there.
Throw it back at you. So that's another thing. Let's talk about time is your best friend. And when you do apply, honesty, integrity goes a million miles. If you did something, say you did it, and then at least they can see what you did, and they can put, what have you done since then? When I got out of college, I did all sorts of stuff in college. But when I got to actually applying at the PD, taking my polygraph, they ask you those questions. It's just better to be, you know, let the chips fall where they will. So integrity, I think it's important all the way around, whatever you do.
Questions?
Yes.
When you apply to CSP, how much, because I don't know definitely like dive into your past, but how much will your family affect your chances?
You can have me on this one. From my experience, it's about you as an individual now, and things, if your family's involved with a criminal world or lifestyle, they'll look at what you've done to separate yourself, and they really like to look about you as a person, what you have done with your life. This is what was told to me years back. They don't want to hire angels. You know, they know everybody has lived life and things have happened to them in their life. They want folks from all different backgrounds. You know, when I was in the academy, I had many folks who were teachers. You know, pilots from the Air Force. You know, so they look for a big cross section of the population, and they know with that, you know, humans are just that. They're human. You're going to make mistakes, but they like to concentrate on the human. Yeah, no, they won't. You'll be okay. Yeah, you can't be responsible for the folks around you. You can be responsible for you.
Other questions? All right, our next panel member is Scott Roth from the...
Oh, we got another here.
Sorry.
How do you spell your last name?
B as in boy,
Okay.
A-R-E-L-A.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
If you have additional questions, I have a UCCS email if you want to. I wouldn't mind responding. bbarella@UCCS. But I can forward you the locations and the websites, whatever it might be that you want.
Okay, moving on. Next speaker, presenter Scott Roth from the Texas Department of Public Safety. He is with their Recruitment and Training Division, and he's all the way from Amarillo, Texas. So I'll turn it over to him.
Outstanding. Thank you. If you don't mind, I would say, I don't like sitting down a whole lot, and I really don't like standing behind podiums, so if that's okay. My name is Trooper Roth. I'm with the Texas Highway Patrol. I do work with recruitment. That is my primary responsibility, but I'm still attached to the Highway Patrol Division. Okay, so I'm still out pushing cars. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come and speak to you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to I mean, there's years of wisdom, and I'm just a little man on the totem pole. But there are some things that I think you need to understand, and you've heard this, and I'm just going to rehash it. One of them is, listening to all the speakers that have spoken this morning, it's all about the same thing, doing your best, being your best. The other is professionalism, integrity. That is one thing that we all hold in common. And getting into the organization that I represent, it is no different. You're going to have to be at the top of your game. That's physically, mentally, academically, emotionally. You've got to be at the top of your game. That's what we all have in common. It always kind of breaks my heart when I see a student that has a bachelor's degree and they apply with us, and they're criminal justice majors, and they come in and they hand me an application, and it looks like it was done on a big cheap pad with a big cheap pencil. You know, I'm the first person they're going to see when they come to the department. That's my first impression. Is, you know, I have an individual that's coming to me, and they're looking at this job like it's Whataburgers or Walmart or McDonald's. First impressions is going to carry you a long way. It's right off the bat. The involvement, the networking. If you're interested in a career in law enforcement, they're exactly right. You need to get involved. You need to find out about that department. You need to find out about the individuals working in that department. You need to be involved because you're building a relationship. You're looking to have a career with that organization, then you need to be involved. You need to get a foot in the door. And the better that you look, and the more that they see that you have a desire, the better off that you're going to be in the long run. Our basic requirements to get into our department are very simple. You have to have 60 hours of college, or 2 years active military service, or 2 years as a law enforcement officer with another law enforcement agency. You have to be 21 years of age. You have to have a clean criminal history. We will not look at anybody that has more than a Class B misdemeanor. And even the Class B misdemeanors, you're going to have 10 years from that conviction before we'll even talk to you. There can be no history of drugs, no history of domestic violence. The biggest problem that we face as an agency today is society. Because whether it's legal or whether it's not illegal, amongst your age group, it doesn't matter. It's what's socially accepted. However, we enforce laws. And you're going to have to be a cut above, and you're going to have to be above what society accepts in order to work for us. So you have to not only be on top of your game academically, but your lifestyle has to be on. You got to be on top of that as well. The choices and the decisions and the actions that you take and are making now are affecting your future. And if you want to have a career, then you need to be thinking about what it is that you're involved in. Because we're going to look at it. And we're going to look at it hard. Physically, you know, I appreciate what they've already talked about. Now, I'm 46 years old. I'm the youngest man here. I'm 46 years old. I've been with this department for 13 years now. And I'm still pushing a car. It's in my blood, it's in my system. I'm not going to give up on it. But I understand more than anything else that if you're not physically fit, you're not mentally fit, and you're not emotionally fit. We work long hours. Last month, I put in 100 hours of overtime. That is a regular monthly thing for me. Okay? I'm out pushing cars. I'm out engaging the public. I'm out chasing people. Right now, we're doing a lot of border operations, and so I'm doing a lot of vehicle pursuits. I'm doing a lot of arrests. I'm doing a lot of chasing through the bush on foot. I'm 46 years old. It takes me a little longer to get over stuff. But as long as I'm working the road, pushing a car, I'm going to stay on top. I'm going to stay in shape, physically. Because there's always somebody younger, there's always somebody smarter, and there's definitely always somebody faster. You may be able to outrun me, but how long can you last? Because I'm like a pit bull, I ain't going to give up. You know, and that's the deal. But on top of everything else, everything about our department is courtesy, service, protection. Everything about our department is integrity. Every time that we make contact with a good guy or a bad guy, it doesn't matter. We always approach things the same. And when we look at people that are coming into our department, those are the type of people that we're looking for. We're looking for individuals that have a desire to be their best and to be a professional. Our attrition rate in the academy, I did appreciate what he was saying about law school, because it's no different with us. If I have 100 students that apply and make it into our academy, out of that 100, 70 of them are going to graduate. 30 of them are going to disappear within the first few weeks. And it's always for the same two reasons. They're not prepared physically, and they're not prepared mentally. Our academy is a 6.5-month academy. It is a military boot camp. There is no ifs, ands, buts about it. And we push people to the edge. We push people to their limits. And I again appreciate what they were saying about academically. Physically, we're going to push you beyond what you think that you can take. And academically, we will not accept anything on any of our exams. We will not accept anything less than 80%. Anything less than 80% in our department is a failure. And we're not going to have that. So if you're going to survive in our department, you're going to have 80% or above. You're going to be, everybody that graduates from our academy is going to be at the top of their class. Because that's the way that it's set up. But we have to be that way for one reason and one reason only. We do not have partners. Every one of us is pushing a car, is pushing it by themselves. We're a state law enforcement agency, meaning that we are scattered abroad. Usually our backup is 30 to 45 minutes away. So whatever it is that's happening on the road, it's up to you to handle the situation. We don't call supervisors. We know we ain't going to have backup. So whatever it is, whatever the situation is, you are going to be the one that's responsible for taking care of that situation. Whether it be a natural disaster, or whether it be a major seizure, whether it be a felony arrest, whether it be a multi-vehicle accident, whatever it is, you are the individual. And whether or not you know anything, all the other agencies that will show up to help you, they're going to look to you to be able to have all the answers, even if you don't have all the answers, which is 90% of the time. That's why we all carry law books in the back of our car. We'll get to you in just a minute. We make phone calls, you know. But, you know, whether we want to or not, everybody's looking at us. So it's important. The other thing is, every one of our officers in this agency, every one of us are investigators. You spend, before you can go off into another division, and we have 15 divisions. We are the second largest state law enforcement agency in the country. We have 12,000 people that work for us. 6,000 of those individuals are law enforcement. we're licensed. About 4,600 of us are in a uniform. But every one of us, we are all investigators. You have to spend 4 years in the highway patrol before you can even go off into another division. And the reason for that is because we are all investigators. Everything that you learn in the highway patrol, by the time you decide to specialize and go into a different division, you've already got the groundwork laid because you've already been doing it for 4 years. The only thing that they're doing when they go off into the other division is that they begin to specialize off of what they already know. But every one of us is an investigator. We handle all of our cases. From the traffic stop to the end of the court proceedings, it is that individual officer's responsibility. So if you end up making a seizure, or whatever it is, if it begins to involve multiple agencies, you are the officer in charge of that investigation. So no matter how many agencies become involved, you are it. And so that puts a lot of pressure on our individual officers. On top of that, if we get into a situation where, for instance, in July, I was working a border operation. I got in a vehicle pursuit. The vehicle pursuit, the individuals ended up bailing out. It ended up being a smuggling operation. There were six illegal aliens that were involved, and one coyote, what we call a coyote, the guy that was doing the smuggling, working for the cartel. I start off in a pursuit. They bail out into the field. All of a sudden, now we have to do a search operation. Okay. As other officers begin coming in and begin responding, and everybody's looking for direction, everybody's looking for what do we need to do, we're bringing in the aircraft, and now we're coordinating aircraft. I was the individual that ended up coordinating that entire mess. Not the supervisors. You are the coordinator. You initiated it, you coordinated it. And so now you have the responsibility of putting together the search operation, setting up the perimeters, coordinating with the aircraft, working with all the teams to get the search completed. You are that individual. That's a lot of demands. That's a lot of pressure. That's what we expect. To get through our application process, it's going to take you 4 to 6 months. You'll fill out an application online. That application will go to whatever test location you decide to go to in the state. You'll come in. You're going to take it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a PT test. You've got to have 50% at a minimum. If you pass that, then we'll start with the written exams. We have 2 written exams. One's a reading comprehension exam. One is a math exam. Both of them 45 minutes long. They're multiple choice. They're simple tests. And yet people always fail. Because we don't give you any aids. It's all here. If you pass the written exams, then we'll set you up for a polygraph. If you pass the polygraph, then we'll invite you to go to Austin. You'll sit in front of an oral board. You'll be graded on the oral board. They'll take the grade from the board, the grade from the written exams, the grade from the PT test. If you're in the top percentage, they'll ask you to spend the night. The next day, you're going to have a morning full of psychological exams, which you will feel like a badly idiot by the end of. You'll visit with our psychiatrist. You'll do a physical and you'll do an eye exam. At that point, the file will go back to the field. Then we do the background investigation. It'll take a month to get through the background investigation. We are going to look at every square inch of your life. Your current employment, your past employment, whatever schooling you've had. If you're in the military, we're going to track down every unit that you were involved with. We're going to talk to your NCOs and to your commanders. We're going to go back to high school. We're going to look at your family. We're going to look at your finances. We're going to talk to all your neighbors, those that will speak for you and those that will speak against you. We're going to look at every square inch of your life. And if that goes well, then we'll invite you to go to our academy. 6.5 months, military boot camp. Starts at 3:30 in the morning, You're in classroom until 11 o'clock at night. You'll do anywhere from 4 to 6 hours of PT every day. All of our classes are taught by lawyers from the Attorney General's office, the top lawyers in the state. But it's all for that end result. Once you graduate from the academy, you'll spend another 6 months on the road training with another officer. Then you spend another 6 months living under a microscope. Everything that you do, everything that you say, every action that you take will be monitored and evaluated. At the end of that 1 year, then we're going to say, ominous, dominus, congratulations, you're a full-grown trooper. That's what it takes to get into our department. I appreciate the time. I will leave flyers out. If anybody has any questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you. One other family member that we have scheduled to present today, Mr. Rod Walker, unfortunately had another engagement at the same time as this one, so he wasn't able to be here, but we have, or he has developed, I should say, a leadership in criminal justice course. It's a 4,000 level course. It's an elective, and he does a great job preparing you, not only for the career fields you want to get into, but also ways of looking, again, at advancement. So keep that class in mind. It's a very popular class. 2 others that Mr. Radabot teaches, interview and interrogation, and now developed advanced interview and interrogation. Those of you that want to get into police work, excellent course to take from him. You have to have at least a B or better in the interview and interrogation class before you can apply for the advanced. With that, he has set it up with the Colorado Springs Police Department, where you're actually working with detectives out in the field. You're not just behind a desk, you're actually out and involved with them. Now, we limit that class to 15 students, so if you've taken this 30-50 interview and interrogation, or you plan to, keep the advanced one in mind. That will undoubtedly help with your career. My thanks to the panel members. I also want to thank, again, Pam Sawyer, and I'm going to turn